What's going on, everybody? It's your boy Jobbers and Goons. I'm not gonna lie to you, I'm excited because this is a verse we're covering for the first time on the channel in a video. I'm super fucking excited for this because for a long time I wanted to get into Warhammer 40K with you, but I'm gonna be honest, there's no real guidance to how the fuck to jump into such a crazy verse, so I never really knew where to start, even though here and there people would comment, yo, cover Warhammer. Never really had a place to start. Recently, my lawyer GB, shout out to him, he started checking it out. He started sending me book links. I started reading the comics, and I'm excited to dive into the verse. Now, I haven't read everything yet. Definitely don't want people thinking that it's a massive verse, but that's what makes it amazing because there's like no heroes here. It's absolutely fucked. And you have just chaos everywhere. And today, for those that either just want to see Warhammer power scaled or have never gotten into it and want a place to start, I'm going to power scale arguably one of the most important concepts within Warhammer and Warhammer 40K, which is the warp, the chaos that helps orchestrate and propagate all the wild shit that goes down in 40K. If you are a fan of this verse, or a fan of power scaling in general, or just my funny takes on things, make sure to smash the like button. Let's get this to 200 likes, and I will drop more Warhammer content. Again, I'm looking into it more and more every day, reading more and more every day. Super excited to keep talking about the verse. Now, what is the warp? I'm going to go over what the warp is, why it's such a big deal for those that aren't as familiar with the verse, and how you can scale it and what the several different feats of it and statements are. Now, first of all, what's Warhammer 40K? This is a time in a verse where there's no heroes. It's literally a bunch of crazy people who either are strong enough to do something about it and get some semblance of power, or they're just crazy but they can't win. Alright? Like, there's no in between. There's no real heroes. Like, there's maybe a few you could argue for, but overall, it's a pretty grim place, right? And one of the big powerhouses throughout all the cosmos is the warp. From the warp comes all the things that haunt the many characters and species and races from the material universe. And we are going to explain how strong that warp is. Now, let's go for the low ball, right? Let's go for an absolute low ball for those that are player hating on Warhammer 40K scaling. First of all, it is confirmed. Multiple to hundreds and up to thousands of dimensions actually compose the warp. This is an estimation from a human mind, and I'm going to explain why that's important in a second. Now, I need to really explain to you why this is the low ball for the warp, right? This has to be a low ball, as it's conceded within the same works we are referencing right now, that the human mind can't really conceptualize the warp itself. So there's no way for a human to really properly compose what the warp is made of, especially if they're not some high tier psych and stuff like that, right? So overall, to say it's limited to dimensions is the absolute low ball. And at the absolute low ball, the warp's hyper-versal, which is pretty impressive because a lot of things you can low ball well below hyper, but even the warp in 40K, it withstands the hate. It's at bare minimum hyper versal in power. Now, for those who wanted to settle for lower than Outer-versal, time for you to exit the video, but I hope you smash the like button on your way out, because after this we're pretty much talking about all things Outer-versal, because the one thing I think everyone can agree to, if they really look into the verse, especially about the warp, there's definitely Outer-versal arguments for Warhammer 40K and some of the higher tier concepts. So let's get into some of the Outer-versal information we have provided for the warp. For example, we know that based on several guidebooks, comics, novels, the realms within it are formless and conceptual in nature. They can't be bound to any semblance of restrictions. So things like dimensions can't be applied to them. On top of this, they are made up of archetypal powers like dreams and nightmares. All these things literally are components that make up the warp, which is pretty scary to think about. While once there was one chaos god who presided over everything in creation, I'm probably going to butcher fucking names early on. Sorry about that. I think it's Zinech or something like that. He was the one who ruled over pretty much everything in creation, right? With creation, bare minimum, including perhaps being above the warp. You'll see why that's insane. The other gods eventually put their, bullshit aside, decided to jump his ass, take him down as the one king over everything. And this warp beef both destroyed the universe and helped lead into new creations. So just the beef between the chaos gods involving the warp is outer easily, which is pretty crazy to think about. Now we have other examples, especially taken out of the works, that concepts like time, space, physics themselves and the laws that govern physics, and logic all have zero hold / no value within the warp. This is another overpowered aspect because things like logic, math, they can be scaled to outer, even high outer, and to scale beyond that with ease is absolutely insane and gives you outer to mid, even high outer arguments just off that. Now, even the lower, quote, chaos demons all have true forms that reside within the warp. Why is that scary? Think about this. All the trash cans that work under Darkseid are suddenly outer when they pull up, right? That's what that would mean. These chaos demons, even if they're the fodder within their own ranks, they are made up of the warp and they come from the warp. Defeating their physical form within the material universe only causes them to return to their true, non-physically or dimensionally bound nature within the warp. The fact that you got the weaklings, or the weaker ones compared to their homies, running around at outer, disgusting to think about. We're on some Skyrim shit, dealing with shit like that. Now, why, and this is kind of a question when you're new to the verse you might have, is yo, the warp's fucking insane. Why don't they just bolo the material universe? That's actually kind of simple to answer. The reason for that? No one gets along. The chaos gods, they all beef. Humanity's trying to make their own play. Emperor Man, who's a fucking Chad. Smash the like button if you want a video on the Emperor. He holds it down for Warhammer. In the universe itself, there's plenty of factors to why they don't get along. And because of that, they all beef and never actually get the job done, which is hilarious. Now, like I said before, and with the evidence we've shown thus far, anything that comes from the warp is beyond dimensionality. They are pure entropy or emotion. Reality simply isn't real to beings from the warp. As a result of this transcendence, they actually become weaker within reality. It's not real to them, and thus their physical forms are, to some degree, weaker than where they would be within the warp. By the way, shout out to my boy, one of the mods in my server, Omega, for helping me gather some of the scans. We might not always agree on scaling, but he's definitely helped with the information, so shout out to him. He's also a big Warhammer fan. Now, the crazy thing about the warp is there's even high degrees of outer-versal arguments for the lowest layers of the warp. Let me give you an example in the quote from the Magnus, the Red Master of Prospero novel. Magnus drifted on tides unknown. An infinite white void surrounded him, without dimensions or points of reference. He did not know this place, but it was clearly not the Great Ocean. Like I said, even the earlier stages of the warp, easily outer-versal. It is confirmed that the layering of the void is infinite in nature, and it can't be quantified. How many times over it transcends itself. So basically, which we just did, you establish the lowest layer as easily outer-versal, having infinite transcendences after that easily gets to high outer. So definitely tune in for this. The immensity of the void is impossible to understand. The layered infinities of the Empyrean even more so. This quote would come from the Dark Imperium, and another quote from the Dark Imperium is just as impressive. And just as an ape's mind cannot hold an ocean, and the notion of a whole world is inexplicable to it, so a man's mind cannot hold the void, and the layered infinities of the warp are beyond him entirely. Now, smash the like button if you're a crazy scaling fan and a Warhammer fan. This is that point, right, where we have the higher layers / the warp itself at high outer. Let's get really fucking crazy. Now, while the capabilities of the warp is absolutely nuts, Chaos Gods can literally shake the warp in its entirety in their battles, rages, and different squabbles. This fact puts Chaos Gods easily high outer, which makes them mad difficult to make matchups for and versus battles. Now, you can make a weird argument that the Chaos Gods and their latent power compose the warp itself. Now, I kind of found this when I saw a quote in the work saying that the Chaos Gods are basically synonymous with the warp, like the warp doesn't exist without the Chaos Gods and vice versa. And I kind of want to continue looking into that. I might be wrong about that, but that's one of the arguments you can make, even if that's the only evidence. You can kind of steelman that. So it's pretty interesting to talk about. Now, another thing that's stupid impressive about the warp is that concepts, ideas, philosophies, and even religions form from the passive craziness of the warp. So anything that can be contained philosophically, religiously, things of that nature, which easily gets into Outer-versal, all of those things were created from the likes of the warp, which we can discover in this quote from 1,000 Suns. Quote, "The nobility of his cause threw off sparks of potency that created phantom worlds and concepts in his wake. Entire philosophies and bodies of thought would be born into the minds of those lucky enough to have his leavings descend upon their dreaming minds." Now, finally, and smash the like button if you're a Warhammer fan, the Emperor, who I'm going to make a video on, but let's try to get this to 200 likes before I drop it, is implied to be able to stave off the Chaos Gods with his presence. That's nuts. This man's such a Chad. He has the Chaos Gods in check. Yeah, they're kind of trying to rumble here and there, but they know he can pull up, so they can't fully engage. Emperor's that raw, and his presence keeps them holding off. This gives credence to perhaps the warps and chaos not entirely being Chaos God's power, as we know the Emperor is someone who masterfully weaves the chaos / warp. But regardless, the scaling for the warp is crazy. Worst case, you get it the high outer for the entirety of the warp, and it goes crazy. But anyways, guys, let me know what you think of Warhammer 40K. What do you think of this video? Again, I don't know all the information yet. Definitely enjoying my read-throughs so far and all the stuff I've looked into. And I'm looking forward to continuing to put out Warhammer content as I grow with the verse. Thank you guys so much for watching. And if you know a shit ton about Warhammer, stop by the Discord server. Link in the description. Let's talk about it. Excited to meet you. Anyways, thank you guys so much for watching. It's your boy Jobbers and Goons, and I'll see y'all later. Peace.